Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about social capital. So I run CICs and work with CICs all the time, and one thing I notice is that a lot of people are from quite tight-knit disadvantaged communities who are setting up CICs, and often what I notice that they have a massive advantage in that they're from communities that have a massive amount of social capital. By social capital, I mean we've got tight-knit communities that have got great structures of supporting each other. There's rich culture that comes out of some of those communities. And there are lots of ways that you can really work with that social capital in your CIC and deliver something that other institutions can't do. So for instance, NHSs, schools and all these things, they may prefer to get your CIC in because your CIC comes from people who've got lived experience and more social capital, whereas a lot of those sort of organisations and structures lack that. So I'm going to be talking about that in this video. It's an interesting one. I hope you stay tuned, and if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know more about CICs, jump over to my website where I've got my membership. I've also got masterclasses on the membership, and also on this YouTube channel now, I've got extra videos which you can subscribe to. So that aside, let's get into it. So why am I doing this video on social capital? It's something that I've thought about for a while, but also I saw an interview with Kano and the director of Kitchen, which is a new Netflix video that came out, film that came out. And I don't know if any of you saw it. Do watch it. It's really interesting. It's set in the future. And what the director wanted to do is they basically wanted to talk about how a lot of poor areas were disadvantaged, how they grew up in London. And there was a lot of disadvantaged things, but how they also were very rich in tight-knit communities and culture, music, dance, art, and all of these things that tend to come out with more disadvantaged communities. And it got me thinking, because it made me think about our CICs. And obviously I mentor hundreds of you across the country. Loads of you are from inner city areas like Birmingham, London, and I see this a lot. I'm from a very disadvantaged area here in Cornwall, and I see the strength in some of those small communities. And I think that we need to think about that when we think about our CICs. Here's my tip, don't try to be like a professional organisation. Instead, really boast about the fact that you are from lived experience, that you are from a small community that has a tight-knit community strength to it, that you are engaged and with that community, that you work with local, whether it be the local churches or community groups or volunteers in your community, and all this little close-knit stuff that goes on in your community, because that's what grant funders want to fund. They want to fund that grassroots stuff. They want to fund that tight-knit community stuff. And also, if you're looking to get paid partnerships or contracts with larger organisations, they will choose you because you are well positioned in those communities. So they can't do that. Like if you are, running, like, I don't know, you're a major organisation that's got, and I see this all the time with organisations that are able to pull down these massive budgets, but they have no connection on the grassroots, no connections in the community. Their organisations are almost soulless. They don't have any of that cultural richness. They don't have that lived experience. And those are the ones that will look to hire your organisation. So definitely think about what cultural capital you have and what you can tap into in your community. I don't know about you, but I've heard sometimes that phrase, turn your pain into power. And I think that is something that comes from, again, having lived experience, again, or from coming from a disadvantaged community. So turn your pain into power. I think when people talk about this, they're saying, really, say you've been through something. There's nothing greater than telling your story about how you came through it. It's so powerful. I was working this week with a person who has had lived experience of prison. He set up the most incredible organisation. All of his staff are people who've been in custody, and they do brilliant rehabilitative work with people before they leave prison and come out. And, really that is so much more impactful than a police officer or probation officer can do. Because they are somebody who maybe have just read the textbook or done the course. They may not have lived experience. And those services are actually now trying to recruit deliberately people with some lived experience because they need to balance that out. And I think also, if you have been through some kind of pain, maybe you are somebody who's had a certain health problem, maybe you've experienced some kind of trauma or abuse in your life and you've come through it and you've gained tools and you want to share those tools, that is absolutely really, really important. And I think, again, you're more tapped into what's available in your community. You're also aware of what wasn't available and you're trying to now fill that gap. Now, tight-knit communities can be fantastic as well. Like I said, they think about using things in your community rather than like hiring a space in a big organisation or a big fancy place. Think about hiring stuff, working with local church rooms, community rooms, those little things in your area. I often talk about on this channel how you can often get those things for free, and they look better as well. I had one CIC, she was offered a room with her local council for 3 months to just run workshops because they want it used. So often in communities, they actually have these spaces and they want them used. So why not pivot yourself into that area? Make sure you use those little community rooms rather than go for some glitzy place in the centre of town. And then, as I said, there's about culture, music, just that, again, if you think about some of the most incredible cultural events in this country, of course, Notting Hill springs to mind, for example. That is a fantastic community-run carnival. They do all the, obviously for a long period before, they're designing all the costumes, the rehearsing for the music, and whether it be dance or whatever else they're doing in terms of performance. And, how wonderful is that and how culturally rich is that? Now, a local council couldn't just put something like that on, but a community can, because there's so much strength within that community. They have the lived experience, they have the culture, they have the connections. So that social capital definitely lives, is very strong in more disadvantaged, close-knit communities. I think that when communities become affluent, which is one of the problems with gentrification, is that it loses that tight-knit kind of sort of strength, and you can see that. And I've been going to places like Brooklyn in New York, for example, for the last 20 years, and what a shift because of gentrification. A lot of you in London will probably see the similar things. With gentrification, I think it loses so much culture. It might have some cool coffee shops and some cool street art murals, and that kind of thing, is great, but it has lost that sort of more raw culture that it originally had in that community vibe. Like, for instance, they talk about how in Brooklyn, for instance, people used to sit out on the steps. There used to be more of a street culture where people, guys would be on the streets, young people would be playing in the streets, and then that kind of stuff has now gone as those areas have become gentrified. They've become safer, crime has come down, great, but then they've also left, kind of lost that other side of people being, allowed to be on the streets and, in the community. Because with gentrification, it's great that you clean up crime, but you almost kind of clean up as well, chuck out a lot of that community street culture. So I think there's a lot to think about there. I think that go and watch The Kitchen because it's interesting, and have a think about your CIC, especially if those of you are coming from very culturally strong, disadvantaged, small, tight-knit communities. Think about your social capital. Think about that as a power. Think about how you are offering something that, mainstream society doesn't, and think about how you can pivot yourself. And if you want to talk to me about any of that, or you just want to jump in the comments with any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.